Sometimes a song doesn't become famous everywhere at once. Instead, it travels quietly across cities, across radio stations, across late night headphones and long train rides, until suddenly it becomes part of the emotional landscape of an entire generation. That's exactly what happened with Love is a Shield by Camouflage, released in 1989. For many listeners across Europe, the song felt instantly familiar, not because they had heard it before, but because it carried the emotional atmosphere of the era. A steady electronic rhythm, melancholic melodies, and a voice that sounded thoughtful, almost fragile, as if the singer were reflecting on the complicated nature of love itself. By the end of the 1980s, synth-pop had already reshaped popular music, but Love is a Shield arrived with something slightly different. It carried the sonic influence of bands like Depeche Mode, yet also had its own identity that was introspective, atmospheric, and deeply emotional. And this podcast episode is about how three young musicians from Germany created one of the most memorable synth pop songs of the late 80s, a song that quietly captured the feeling of a generation standing between optimism and uncertainty. Camouflage was formed in Bethlehem-Bissingen, a small town in southern Germany. The band's core members were Marcus Meyn in vocals, Heiko Meyle, keyboards and songwriting, and Oliver Kreisig, keyboards and programming. Like many young musicians growing up in the 1980s, they were fascinated by the new possibilities created by synthesizers. Electronic instruments were becoming more accessible, and suddenly small groups of musicians could create entire sonic landscapes with just a few keyboards and drum machines. For Camouflage, that technology became their musical language. But technology alone doesn't create emotion. What made the band stand out was their songwriting, melodies that carried a sense of reflection and vulnerability. Their early music was heavily influenced by Depeche Mode, whose dark themes, textures, and emotional lyrics had become hugely influential across Europe. But Camouflage wasn't simply copying that sound, they were learning from it and gradually shaping their own voice. By the time 1989 arrived, synthpop had already gone through several waves. In the early 80s, bands like Depeche Mode, New Order, Erasure, and Pet Shop Boys had helped define the genre. Electronic drums and synthesizers were no longer experimental tools. They were central elements of mainstream pop. But the late 80s also brought a subtle shift. The bright optimism of early synthpop began blending with more introspective themes. Cold War tensions still lingered across Europe, political changes were beginning to reshape the continent, and many young artists were reflecting on identity, relationships, and emotional uncertainty. Camouflage's music fit perfectly into that atmosphere. Love is a Shield became the standout track for Camouflage's debut album, Voices and Images. The song was built around a simple but powerful idea. Love can protect us, but it can also expose us. The title itself feels almost philosophical. A shield is something we use for defense, a barrier against harm. Yet love, while comforting, also makes people vulnerable. That tension became the emotional core of the song. From the first seconds, Love is a Shield creates a very specific atmosphere. A steady synthesizer pattern forms the foundation of the track. The rhythm moves forward calmly, not aggressively, but persistent. Layered above that foundation are shimmering keyboard textures that stretch across the soundscape like distant lights in a nighttime city. Then Marcus Meyn's voice enters. His delivery feels intimate and reflective, almost as if he's speaking directly to the listener rather than performing for a crowd. The melody doesn't rush, it unfolds slowly, giving each phrase time to settle. And as the chorus arrives, the emotional weight of the song becomes clear. One of the strengths of Love is a Shield lies in its lyrical simplicity. The words are not complicated or abstract, but they carry emotional depth. The song reflects on the ways people use love to protect themselves from loneliness, fear, and uncertainty. At the same time, it acknowledges that love itself can be fragile. The lyrics feel like a quiet internal conversation, someone trying to understand their own emotional defenses. In many ways, the song captures a universal experience. Everyone wants connection, but everyone also fears the vulnerability that comes with it. If you enjoy this kind of deep listening and reflection, join us live every week with the 90s Lover Show on Fridays and with the 80s Lover Show on Saturdays, both live at 7 p.m. Eastern on our YouTube and Kick channels. I first start the YouTube live stream for around 10 minutes just to allow people some time to gather as a kind of waiting room, and then we continue the full show live stream on Kick, where we can play full music, video clips with no restrictions. I, I share the link to Kick for you all to move there. And on Kick is where things really come alive with the 4 show segments, your song request, live voting, your voice messages on air, and even phone calls to share memories, stories, and reflections connected to the music and life. You can participate or simply listen, and if you feel like participating, you can do it on the Kick's live stream chat or by leaving comments on the main post of our public Facebook group, which allows more space to write. Join our public group on Facebook by searching for RetroLovers Radio 80s and 90s Nostalgia. Make sure also to subscribe on YouTube and turn on the notification bell. And keep an eye on all the 6 extra monthly special shows as well. Love is a shield to hide behind. Love is the field to... When Love is a Shield was released in 1989, it quickly became a success across Europe. In Germany, the song reached high positions on the charts and helped establish Camouflage as one of the leading synth-pop acts of the country. The track also gained popularity in other European markets, where listeners were already deeply connected to the synth-pop sound. For many fans, the song felt like a bridge between earlier electronic bands and a new generation of artists. It had the emotional depth of Depeche Mode, but also a distinct melodic warmth. If this podcast episode is bringing back memories of hearing Love is a Shield by Camouflage, maybe on late night radios or during a quiet moment when synth-pop seemed to capture exactly how you felt, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and share your memories in the comment section. That will be of great support to keep this episode coming. Your support helps keep these musical stories alive. Alright, let's continue. Decades later, Love is a Shield still carries the emotional atmosphere of the late 80s, but it also feels timeless. Part of that comes from the production. Unlike some heavily processed electronic songs from the era, the arrangement here feels balanced and spacious. The synthesizers create mood rather than overwhelming the melody. The rhythm stays steady but never mechanical, and the vocal performance keeps the emotional center grounded. But perhaps the biggest reason that the song still resonates is its theme. Love as protection, love as vulnerability. That tension never disappears from human experience, no matter the decade. Although Camouflage never achieved the same global superstardom as some of the bands that inspired them, they built a loyal international following. Their music continued evolving through the 1990s and beyond, exploring darker tones, more complex arrangements, and deeper lyrical themes. But Love is a Shield remains their most recognizable track. It's the song that introduced many listeners to the band, and the one that still appears on synth-pop playlists decades later. For fans of electronic music, it stands as a reminder that powerful songs don't always need dramatic arrangements. Sometimes all it takes is the right melody, the right atmosphere, and the right emotionally honesty. Now, I would love to hear your memories. When did Love is a Shield by Camouflage first enter your life? Did you hear it on the radio in the late 80s, in a club, or on a mixtape, or perhaps years later through streaming playlists on synthpop compilations? And when that opening synthesizer pattern begins today, does it take you back to a particular place or moment in your life? Please share your story in the comments, because every listener carries their own memories of where this song first found them. Music has a strange way of protecting moments. A melody can act like a shield for memory itself, preserving emotions, places, and experiences long after time has moved forward. And sometimes, when a familiar song begins to play, those memories return, clearer than ever. So, do you remember now? This music gave you joy. Now allow this moment to receive that feeling. Alright, everyone, thank you so much for being here in another episode, and see you all in the next one.